She is Jane Slater from the NFL Network, covers the Dallas Cowboys extensively, but also covers the league-wide. A little bit of a curveball here. Jason Witten, I've thought about his place in Cowboys history. You would agree that there's no doubt he's a top 10 Dallas Cowboy of all time, right? Can I assume that you would agree with that statement? Or because of the richness of this franchise, is he not there because he doesn't have the ring and he doesn't maybe, have the lore that some of the other guys did?
Great question, Hector. When you walk in the Star in Frisco, there's an iconic painting as you walk in the locker room, and right there to the right, you've been there, as they're heading into the indoor practice facility, it is Jason Witten without that helmet on. Remember when he continued to play without his helmet? He is such a tough guy. He's always done things the right way. What I respected about Jason is when he came back out of retirement, and I think he had hoped he'd have the same sort of success that Tony Romo did in the booth. And while Romo has been fantastic, let's not forget that he's got Jim Nantz as his broadcasting partner. There are just some people that can make you not only look good, but set you up to succeed. He came back from the broadcasting booth. He didn't ask for his locker back from Zach Martin. He didn't want his parking spot back. He wasn't the type of guy that said, I'm Jason Witten. In fact, he told me at training camp, he wanted to see the other guys play, but they would have to beat him out to get on the field. And I respected that about Jason Witten. There are times I wish that he had just retired a Dallas Cowboy, had never gone in the booth, and I wish that he hadn't taken the Monday Night Football gig. I think Jason could still be successful in broadcasting. I think he's got a lot to say. He's very fascinating. He's very thoughtful. I don't think Jason was used to caring necessarily what people thought of him because the helmet's on. When the helmet's on the football field, it's a lot easier to block out the noise. But when that helmet's off and you're exposed, it's a little harder. And so I hated it for Jason. I don't think that it smudged his legacy necessarily because I just think he's the type of guy we're always going to remember did it the right way and was a positive force in that locker room. But I do think when you talk top 10 Dallas Cowboys of all time, there sure are a lot of greats. I'd have to marinate on that one a little bit.
Yeah, and I wanted to get your take on that because to me, he's not top 5. Maybe he should be if you look at the numbers, but that's just I fully understand that is a biased, subjective view because I view the 90s Cowboys differently than I view the Tony Romo Cowboys. Like I covered the Tony Romo Cowboys. I'm covering the Dak Prescott, Cowboys. That's different from when you idolize Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, Charles Haley, Moose. The list goes on and on. It's different. So to me, Jay Novacek holds a special place in my heart. If you look at the
Haley.
Yeah, if you look, but I bring up Jay Novacek specifically because he plays the same position as Jason Witten. If you look at the numbers and you look at the impact, you can't compare the two, and I fully understand that. But still, to me, it's Jay Novacek and Jason Witten almost on equal footing, which goes to how subjective I am. I just wanted to get someone else's take and someone who's in the weeds with the team and has covered Jason Witten really his entire career. I want to get your take on that. That's why I asked.
I think it's always to your point, through the lens with which you're defining greatness, because I think we're all a little skewed because I too was, quite frankly, I grew up in the Dallas area, so I was a fan of the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, Jimmy Johnson, if you ask me best coach, a lot of people would say, I don't know if Jimmy would be number 1 on their list. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, Jimmy with Jerry and Barry Switzer's Super Bowl was Jimmy's. So
right. No doubt.
When I look at the that's a tough one. And that's why I always feel for these people that have to come up with the all-decade list and, they have to put up, the Hall of Fame class. And watching Drew Pearson get omitted just absolutely broke my heart. I mean, to me, Drew Pearson is the iconic number 88. I mean, sure, Michael Irvin is iconic. I mean, there is no one better than Michael Irvin. But if you ask my dad's generation, there was no one better than Drew Pearson.
Right.
So it's just at least the Cowboys fan base is lucky. I mean, think of the Cleveland Browns fan base. They don't get the same sort of tough discussions that come about with the Cowboys. But I do think it always depends on through the lens, and there is going to be a little bit of bias based on when you grew up and what teams you watched.
It has been an incredibly fortunate fan base. If you look at the Cowboys Mount Rushmore and you assume that Tom Landry is on that Mount Rushmore, that means the fourth player, because Landry would be one of the four heads on there, the fourth player, meaning the first player to get left off, would easily be the best player in franchise history for, more than half of the other franchises in the league. But that brings us now to the current Dallas Cowboys
That's such a good question.
I know.
Who would you put on the Mount Rushmore? Because I've got to say, you go Tex, you absolutely put Troy Aikman on.
So you would go
1000%.
You would go Tex Schramm on the Mount Rushmore?
No. Landry for sure.
Okay.
I'd go Landry. I'd go Aikman.
You got to have Staubach on there, right?
That's where I was going next. And then it's like, do you omit Emmitt Smith? Do you omit Michael Irvin?
Bob Lilly. Bob Lilly's nickname is Mr. Cowboy.
Right.
That's the thing is,
yeah.
And I'm with you, Jane. I'm so glad. Here's the thing. I'm so glad you brought up Troy Aikman's name before you brought up Roger Staubach's name, because it goes back to what we were talking about a little while ago. It's all subjective in the lens through which we were watching it. Troy Aikman was my guy. Now, I thought out of respect for the 70s and the Cowboys that came before, and not having been able to appreciate the 70s Dallas. I've seen a couple of Dallas Cowboys 70s games from beginning to end when they come on your network, when they re-show the Hail Mary game in 75, the Staubach comeback game against the Niners, the last 2 minutes they were down 18 or whatever, and he brings them back in 72, the Super Bowl against Denver. I've watched those games from beginning to end, but it's not the same because you're watching it and you have a sense of comparison to what you've seen live and what you've seen in your actual lifetime. So to me, and this is going to be blasphemous to a lot of Cowboy fans, Aikman's the guy. But out of respect for legacy, I always go, yeah, Staubach's the greatest quarterback in Cowboys history. I think that's pretty definitive. So, but I'm happy to hear you say Troy, because to me, I think Troy is the guy.
Well, and even this year, when you heard him talking a lot about the Cowboys, when Troy talks, I listen. And I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact he stays top of mind for you. Now, obviously, Roger is still here around Dallas, and he has pivoted into this. I've so much respect for him. And, of course, players didn't make the sort of money that they make now. That in his offseason, he was learning about commercial real estate, and he turned that into an empire. But Troy is still top of mind because of his approach. When I see him on the trail or at the gym, that guy is a beast. Demarcus Ware is another one. Just guys that have gone about it. I could literally make an entire list for you of Cowboys, but for me, it was Troy's approach to the game. It was his tenacity. I think it was his approach to the game that also galvanized a lot of his teammates when Barry Switzer came along and was such a different coach than what Jimmy was. One of my favorite football lives on our network is the Troy Aikman one, if you haven't watched it. It's amazing.
No, it's fantastic. It's my favorite too, Jane. It's my favorite. The part where and he was so honest. And I know we're going off on a deep tangent here, but it was when he was so brutally honest when he talked about how the back half of his career wasn't as enjoyable period by a landslide as the first part of his career, because he had to be the coach as well. He had to be the guy that got on other guys. He had to be the guy that kept everybody in line. He wasn't able to play the good cop to Jimmy's bad cop anymore. He had to be the bad cop. And I can see that. I've been in a position where I've had to be, professionally, where I've had to be the bad cop, and it stinks. It's not fun. It stinks.
You can't do your job.
You're right.
And yeah. I thought the most revealing part was when he talked about possibly going to the Eagles.
Wasn't that something? Yeah.
I was not familiar with that story. It was almost sort of plot twist at the end of it. So I feel like I gave it away, the ending, but it is that good and it's that worth watching. But yeah, I remember the starter jackets when I was in middle school. I remember the 1994 parade downtown. And, it's for me an era and a time where I would watch football with my dad, and every Sunday, that's the way that we connect. And he's not a big sports fan. I never had ESPN on my house. My dad never took us to a baseball game. It wasn't his thing. We were sort of like casual fans. My brother wasn't into football, but it was me and my dad, and I'd make cheese plates and sausage plates with pickles. And for me, that will always be iconic. And it's why I have the career and the life that I do, because of those 90 Cowboys. So there's going to be a little bias there when you ask me about that.
No, same here, Jane. I mean, I was 4.5 hours down south from when those teams were doing what they were doing, but the '90s Cowboys are a huge reason why I started to do this. Like I was like, I want to be in the middle of that. I want to
Yes.
cover that. I want to be able to report on that, bring people highlights on that type of team. It was a love affair that led to the love affair with sports. By the way, for the record, Mount Rushmore, if I had to do it now, Landry, Lilly, Staubach, Emmett. How's that?
Whew. I'd have to go Jimmy, Troy, Michael, Emmett. Sorry.
Yes, my '90s Cowboys. I love the fact that somebody with your credibility can say it, because if I said it, I would be roasted. Jane says it, and it's like, hey, it's Jane Slater.
They were
There's validity to it.
they were that special as a team, and they are that special individually and outside of the organization. My favorite, Emmitt Smith and I did some radio back in the day, and I'll never forget, he showed up to the radio station in a three-piece suit, and I'm wearing cutoff jeans and a ball cap. And I said, Emmitt, you don't have to show up here wearing this. And he said, Slater, if I give you any piece of advice, give them what they came for. Big fan.
Awesome. Reminds me kind of the Michael Jordan thing, when Michael Jordan would always dress immaculately whenever he go out in public, and he'd say, you never know when that might be the only glance someone is ever going to have of Michael Jordan. So along those lines, I think they get it. I mean, they understand their place as sports heroes in society.